Keith, you seem to be muted. You want to do a general introduction? You're muted, Keith. While you're sorting
Welcome
out.
everybody to this evening's Storytelling Cafe, our fortnightly fun with stories. I see that, there's a message from Keith. Well, I hope he's feeling better soon. We're going to begin the evening with Omar, who's actually in the Storytelling Cafe, which is appropriate. And then we'll move on, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories to come, and anyone else who arrives will be welcomed. Okay. If we could mute ourselves now, and I'll hand over to Omar.
Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And I have a very small part of a song in Tamazight, my native language, my native culture, and then I would tell you a story, a very short one. Is that okay? Okay, so the song is like this, and it's very old song that the people in Amazigh culture sing in different places, in the wedding and the gatherers and everything. And basically, the women sing the song the most than the men. This is one song. لا لا يشتكي من تقلع أسيحة ونزا لا لا يشتكي من تقلع أسيحة ونزا. This is a very, very famous Amazigh song that this is like the first part, this is the refrain of the song, and it has a very, very deep in our culture of Tamazight. And the story that I'm going to share with you is one of the beautiful stories I've ever heard recently, and I want to retell this story to you today. And the story goes like this. A long time ago, when the world was still young, in a very beautiful thick forest in some part of the world, there lived a bird. And this bird was very happy and excited, singing all days in the up of the trees and have fun. And the bird is the crow. So the crow was having fun every single morning, and he was singing a song, and he had one thought in his mind that he is the most beautiful bird and the happiest bird in this world. And one day he went and he was just having fun and was singing songs till he saw a swan. And then he started thinking in his mind and he said, what? I must be the most wonderful, beautiful, happiest bird in the world. And now I'm seeing the swan for the first time of my life. I am black. He is beautiful, white color. He must be happier than me. So he went to him and asked him a question. He said to him, you must be the most beautiful bird in this earth, and you must be very happy. And he said to him, you may have this thought in your mind, but you've never seen a parrot. Go and find the parrot and you'll see what is the difference, who is the best bird and who is the most beautiful and the most happy bird in the earth. The crow go researching the parrot till one day he found it and he would say, wow, look at all these two beautiful colors and the green it is a green thing and all this thing. And he would say to him, you must be the most happier bird in the earth. And he said to him, yes, I have the same idea back in the time, but one day I went and I saw a peacock. You must go and find the peacock and you would see who is the best and the most wonderful, the most beautiful, and who is the happiest bird in this earth. It was a long journey, and one day he would just find a zoo and he would come inside and will find a queue, very, very big queue waiting for having to go and find the peacock. And the peacock can imagine the beautiful beautiful colors, and all the people would just see him, and they'd pay a lot of money just to see him. After the end of the visit of the people from all over the world and part of the world, he would go to him and he would say, "You must be the most beautiful and the happiest bird in the earth. How do you feel about that?" Peacock said to him, "I have a lot of colors. I'm very happy. I look very happy, and all the people come all over the world and pay a lot of money. I have a very, very big queue and to see me, and you would spend time, you would spend effort, and all this stuff. But you must know something. I am happy. I am beautiful, but I'm still in a cage because of this good thing that I have. And they think that you are happier than me because you have your freedom. And you just need to go and feel that this is the only thing that matters in this life is your freedom." And then the crow go back to his place in the thick forest. And from then on, he will just appreciate the thing that he has, and he will just forget the thing that he has not. Because the best thing in life is being free. And then he would just live for a long time and would just sing a new song, and all the birds came to him and would have fun with them, and they would sing the beautiful song ever sang in the world. And he lived happily ever after till the end of time. And this is the end of one of the best beautiful stories I've ever heard recently, and I am very happy to share this story with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Omar. And what a nice message. What a nice message. Freedom is more important than all those other things that we perhaps value wrongly. Thank you very much, Omar. I really enjoyed that story. Brilliant. Thank you. And if we can now move on to Tahi, who's unfortunately had a false start earlier, but I'm looking forward to hearing your story that is that but isn't.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Omar. It was wonderful story. I heard that. And I have a short story, is fable from the mouth of the animals, like Omar. Once there was, and once there was not. One day, Donkey said to Tiger, "Did you know that the grass is blue?" Tiger replied, "Of course not. The grass is green." And again they began to argue with each other. "No, blue, green, green, blue, blue, green." And then they started to fight to each other from morning to night. "I'm right, you run. I'm right, you run. Green, blue." They fought and fought until they decided to go for an judgment, for an arbitration. And for that they went before the lion, king of the jungle. Now already before even reaching the forest clearing, lion sitting on his throne, Donkey began to shout, "Highness, Highness, is that true that the grass is blue, right?" Lion very briefly and with grief said, "True, the grass is blue." Donkey joyfully shouted again, "Donkey, the tiger disagree with me and argue with me and annoys me. Punish him, please punish him." Lion replied, "Tiger will be punished with 5 years of silence." That pronouncement, Donkey clapped his front legs firmly, kicked out his hind legs, and went on his way, singing proudly and very loudly, "The grass is blue, the grass is blue, the grass is blue, the grass is blue." Tiger accepted his punishment, but before leaving, came to the lion and said, "Your Majesty, with all due respect, but after all, the grass is green." The lion replied, "In fact, yes, the grass is green." Tiger said, "Why are you punishing me?" And the lion replied, "That punishment nothing to do whether the grass is green or grass is blue. The punishment is because it is not possible for a brave and intelligent creature like you arguing with a donkey. On top of that, come and bother me with that question. The worst waste of time is arguing with the fool and a fanatic who does not care about the truth and reality, but only victory of their beliefs and their delusions. There are those who, no matter how much evidence you present to them, all they want is to be right, even when they are not. So, ignorant screams, dear tiger. Intelligent is silence. Your peace and quiet are worth more. Remember that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Yes, we don't want to be too silent tonight, though, do we? Because we're telling stories, but that's stories with messages tonight. It's really fun, isn't it? And we're going to thank you very much. And we're going to move on to Evita now. Where are you at the moment, Evita? You seem to be traveling all around the world.
Yeah, I'm in another part of Switzerland right now. And we're going to move. I'm coming over to your country. You better flee. In June, mid-June, I'm coming to the UK to be John's roadie and a storyteller. That will be great. Thank you, Tahi. That was a terrific story, by the way. So right now, I was hoping that Baden would be here, but it doesn't matter. It's just that he's familiar with one of the names of the character in this story. And again, it is Mother's Day. As some of you know, usually you get a story that was created in my story mind, but today I just couldn't let go of that concept of Mother's Day. I couldn't stop thinking about mothers with empty arms and mothers with very full arms like me. I feel very fortunate. So I went around thinking, where are the stories that I know? But anyway, I looked and then something popped up. And this is where Baden would come in, but he's not here. So who here knows Jedediah? Some of the greatest stories that are being used and abused have been written in very famous books. And a lot of them come out of the very same place. Sometimes that famous name is Salman. Sometimes it's Suleiman, and sometimes it's Solomon. It's one and the same guy. And I'm not a scholar, so I'm not going to bore you with ages before JC came to this earth. But I found this story for Mother's Day and for our world situation very, very apt. So bear with me. I will share a story that I've only just found this afternoon. I guess you guys already know it. A long, long way away from here. And a pretty long time ago, there were two women. And in those days, women very often lived in a conclave of the same families. The women lived together, and oh, how fortunate were they when they, as mothers, They became mothers. They gave birth to beautiful sons, both of them on the same day. But oh, 2 weeks later, one of the babies was gone, disappeared. What happened? What happened? Everybody was shouting. Everybody was looking. Someone said they seen a wolf. Surely not. But it was so. 2 beautiful mothers, new mothers, only one baby left. And of course, both women said, "This is my baby. No, it is my baby. No, 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 no. It is my baby." So they decided to seek counsel of the prophet David. And David listened to the women arguing, and he said, "You know what? In these times, it's probably best if the older woman has the baby." Oh, everybody was shocked. They took in a big breath and said, but. And the young woman cried, and the old woman smiled, and there was, "No, it's my baby. I'm telling you, it's my baby." "How do you know? How are you going to prove it?" Well, to no avail. Nobody knew whose baby it was. So they decided to go to the prophet David's son, who was no one else but King Suleiman. Suleiman sat there, and of course, as the women walked in, he sat on his throne. Oh, the laments, oh, the noise and the chatter and the jostling. "It's his, it's her baby, it's her. No, 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 it's my baby, it's my baby." It went back and forth and back and forth. Solomon just sat there. King Suleiman put up his hand and said, "Wait, wait. Where are the midwives?" 2 midwives came forward. "Sisters, tell me, is it true that both these women became mothers 2 weeks ago?" "Yes, it is, Your Highness. Yes, it is," they said. "So, it's my baby, I'm telling you." "No, it's my baby. Don't you even try. David gave the baby to me. Give me back my baby." Suleiman put up his hand. "Quiet, everybody. Wait." And King Suleiman prayed. And he thought, and he prayed. And then he raised his wise eyes and he said, "Come forward with the baby. For I shall cut this baby in half to solve this problem." Now the youngest of the women began to cry. The older women said, "Yes, do it, Your Majesty." But the young woman cried and cried and says, "No, no, forget about everything I said. It's her baby. Please." And she handed the babe into the arms of the older mother. The older mother held the baby and smiled. And King Solomon, or Suleiman, he said, "Wait. Give the baby to the young mother, for she's the one that fretted for the life of her son. It is obvious by the reactions that this baby belongs to this woman." And the mother picked up her baby, who no longer cried, and held it in her arms. And everybody bowed before King Solomon, and thanked him for his wisdom. Let us think of that older mother and all the mothers in Jerusalem and around, the mothers with empty arms. Let it be a somber Mother's Day, and let's be grateful for those of us who can hold our babes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for that message at the end. I really enjoy your singing at the
Beautiful,
beginning
such a beautiful
of your
story.
songs.
One of my best.
It's
Thank
a
you.
classic tale, isn't it? A classic tale. Thanks very much, Avita. And now we go on to that shy storyteller, Bubba C.
That almost left me speechless. Almost. But first of all, I got to say something before I tell my story. And that is, I put it in the comments, but I feel the need to say it. First, in the States, we're celebrating Mother's Day now. But regardless of when you celebrate Mother's Day, mothers should be celebrated. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, grandmothers, aunties, little mamas, big sisters, stepmothers, surrogate mothers, and unsung others who are influencing lives in positive ways. Ashe. I had to get that out. Okay. So I'm always encouraging storytellers to retell stories. Just because you told it once doesn't mean you can't tell it again. And I usually akin it to eating a good meal. If you have a great meal, you want to have that meal again. If you're in the habit of eating breakfast, you don't eat breakfast just once. You eat breakfast every day that you can. So I think that a story worth telling is a story worth retelling. Now, having gotten that out of the way, the story I'm going to tell, and Vita, you might be able to help me. It's based on a story I heard on one of our platforms, but I don't remember who told it. So as you listen to the story, if you can remember, I think it was the Indian or Indonesian version of the story, please put it in the comments so I can give proper credit in future tellings. All that out of the way, here goes my story. And of course, you know, this story took place a long time ago. So, this here story is, well, if I tell you what the story is about, there's no need to tell the story. So you're going to have to listen carefully. And I'll tell you what the story is about at the end, because that's what I do when I tell stories. My apologies to some of my southern friends, because this is the southern accent that I landed on today. Hadn't planned on telling it with this accent. Actually, I was going to tell the story with an entirely different accent, but I'm not. I'm going to do it with this one. So you see, way before humans came into being, the animals could talk to each other. Oh, yes. And the animals, it was in the early days, and the animals were deciding where each creature would live. The birds had claimed the sky as their territory. The bats were not happy with that, but that's all right. They decided they'd come out at night and rule the skies. The giraffes decided they were going to live where the tall trees grow because it was easier to eat the leaves standing up than bending way down. The crocodiles and the alligators decided whether the salt water and fresh water was going to be where they lived, and they kind of worked it out. And also the caimans. In fact, the caimans were so popular that later on they had their own island. See what I did there? Cayman Islands. Okay, anyhow. So, all the animals were laying, they decided that the lion was going to be king of the jungle, and I'd be lying to say that wasn't true. And the monkeys decided that the trees were going to be where they hung out. I mean, everybody was more or less happy, except for the frogs and the toads. Now, the way this story was told to me, the frogs and the toads were not happy because, see, they lived in ponds and little streams. And with all the toads and the frogs together, it was just too crowded. And back then, the toads and the frogs were almost indistinguishable. They looked exactly or almost exactly alike. And it was just too crowded. They couldn't hop because if you try to hop, you were bumping into somebody. And they were not happy. So somehow, someone, somewhere, came up with an idea of having a contest. And the contest, whoever won the contest, would decide who would live on land and who would live in the water. Well, you know how it is when a contest, when there's going to be a competition. People gather around, and a lot of times the crowd is full of a lot of naysayers. And so the toads and the frogs were getting ready, and someone decided whoever climbs the highest in a tall tree will be the winner. Now, for the most part, frogs nor toads can climb trees. They're not built for it. So there were people gathered around going, this is going to be funny because they can't climb no trees. This is going to be so funny. It's going to be stupid. And I can hop, said Bro Rabbit, but even I can't hop up in the trees. This is a waste of time, said the hyenas. This is gonna be so funny. All the animals had something to say, and it wasn't very good. It was kind of like being on social media. Anyhow, so the toads and the frogs picked their champions, and so they got to the bottom of the tall tree. Now, some people say it was a baobab tree, but I can't swear to that. And for those who don't know what a baobab tree is, it's a huge, humongous tree, sometimes called a spirit tree, sometimes called the grandfather tree, and its fruit is so bountiful, you can just eat the fruit and not have to worry about anything else. And the branches are so wide, it gives cool shade all throughout the season. And the trees are so wide, some people have been known to set up homes inside of them. But that's another story. So the toads and frogs gathered at the bottom of the tree, and they had their champions, and they began to climb. And they began to climb. They fall down, but they get up. And they began to climb. They fall down, but they get, well, you got the idea. And so they were trying to climb. And so, sure enough, I told you it was going to be funny. Everybody knows that frogs and toads can't climb trees. And look at them, look at them, look at them, look at them. They're making fools of themselves. Look at them, look at them, look at them. And people were laughing right and left. And then they got real bold and go, why are you wasting our time? You know you can't climb no trees. And so as the frogs and the toads began to climb the trees, some of them fell down, but they heard the naysayers. They heard the people telling them they were being stupid. They heard people telling them, stop wasting our time. And so as they began to fall, some of them felt so ashamed, they didn't bother to climb the trees anymore. But there were still some climbing the trees, and they fall down. Still some climbing the trees, and people were still telling them. Even the monkeys got into it. You're not monkeys. You can't climb trees. And they began to fall down. And the more and more they listened to the naysayers, the more embarrassed they were and stopped climbing the trees. And finally, it was one frog. And it was one toad, There was one frog and one toad, and they were climbing, and they were still, there was an animal called the baiton, and the baiton was telling them why they couldn't do it, and there was a Baba C telling them they could do it, but the toad fell down, and he felt so ashamed, he didn't bother to go. And the frog just kept climbing, and kept trying, and got to the top branch of the tall tree that they were climbing. And everybody was cheering now. All of a sudden, everyone knew, I knew he could do it. I knew he could do it. I knew it. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to be friends with the frog that had climbed the tree. And the frog came down, and everybody was telling him how great he was and how magnificent he was. And he paid them no mind. And the frog cleared his throat and said, I'm a frog, and since I won the contest, I will decide who lives where. We frogs will live in the ponds and the streams, and the toads must live on land. Well, the frogs and toads, even though they were competitors, they were animals of the words. So the toads all packed up, and they moved to land. And as the years wore on, the toads, their skin got darker and browner and kind of lumpy. Well, the frogs got kind of lumpy too, but they stayed green. And some of them had little streaks of blues. But that's a blues story for another time. And so they began to live on the land, and the toad began to adapt to living on lands. In fact, some of them could even climb trees without any difficulty. And people would tell the frog, oh, you were so great, and he paid them no mind. See, what they didn't know was the reason why that frog was ignoring all the naysayers was that frog was deaf. That frog couldn't hear people telling him what he couldn't do. That frog didn't hear them decrying his name and his efforts. That frog didn't hear them laughing at him. That frog didn't hear any of that. He was determined that he was going to climb that tree and decide that the frogs could live in the water. Now, you're probably saying, okay, but what's the message? See, the message is this. Often in life, when we have passion, Often in life, when we have dreams, often in life, when we know what we want to do, there'll be people around us telling us why we can't do it, why we shouldn't do it, how we're never going to be able to do it. And you see, when you learn this one particular lesson in life, there's no saying, there's no stopping you from doing what you truly want to do if you have passion, plan, and goals, not necessarily in that order. And that is, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to the people who are telling you why you can't do what you're doing. A lot of storytellers know what I'm talking about, because when they announced to their friends they were going to become storytellers, people said, well, that's interesting, but get a real job and do it on the side. Storytelling is not something you do on the side. Storytelling is something you do from the heart and the soul. So the lesson of this story is, if you have passion, if you have desire, if you have a plan, go for it. Because you don't know what you can do until you do it. Oops, I stepped on a pin, the pin bit, and that's the way that story went. Asante.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and you're so right. You're so right that it's very easy for people to say you can't do that. And why do they? Why do people say you can't do that?
Because they're not content with their own lives.
Ah, well,
And a lot of times
go.
people are willing to share their misery.
That's absolutely right. And well, thank you again for a really entertaining story.
That's becoming one of my favorite stories. People often ask me, what's your favorite story? And my response is the one I'm telling at the time.
Oh, well, indeed. I know. Yes, I know that feeling too.
So
But
now I'm
now,
going to do what people say is nigh impossible for me to do. I'm about to go silent.
I can believe that. But we're now heading off to Susan, who I believe is in South Africa. Another continent to visit. I'll hand over to you now, Susan.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks. So everyone, also a Mother's Day story tonight, to celebrate South African mothers, and also to tell you that we are having severe issues with floods at the moment in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, and that you must please think of the people there. So this is a story, Babasi, it's a Xhosa story. So please, you must Xhosa story from the Eastern Cape. Once upon a time, like you said earlier, long, long ago, when animals and people could still talk to each other, there was a chief who had 2 wives. And for many, many years, they lived, and there was no child born to them. Until one day, the second wife announced that she was going to have a baby. The first wife was so angry. After all, she was the chief's first wife, and she was convinced that with the younger wife now having a child, the chief would no longer favor her and love her. So she made a plan. And on the day the little baby was born, before the birth mother had actually seen the child, she took him to a hut next door that was infested with horrible rats. Ah, she said, this is such a good plan. The rats will eat this child and my hands will be clean. There will be no blood on my hands and the chief will love me more. But she was also very cunning and clever, and she took a puppy to the mommy who had just given birth and said, "Ha ha, here is your child. He looks just like a dog." And the mother, loving the child, was highly embarrassed and went into hiding, but she looked after this little puppy for a long, long time. The rats in the hut, instead of eating the baby, said, "Oh, what a beautiful little thing you are." And they huddled around the baby to keep him warm and brought him little bits of food to help him to survive. Until one day, the chief's first wife walked past the hut and looked through the door, and there she saw the baby gurgling away, ever so happy. And she said, "What's this? The child is still alive? I shall have this hut burnt down." And she went to the chief and said, "This hut is rat infested. You have to burn it." And the chief said, "So I will." But fortunately, the rats had heard her, and they whisked the little baby, you can just imagine the little baby on their back, off to Mother Pig, to the sow, and said, "Mother Pig, do us a favor. We are about to be burnt to death. Will you look after this beautiful child?" And Mother Pig said, "Bring him to me." And she put him amongst the little piglets and let him suckle away. In the meantime, the rats were burnt to death. A few months later, when our little baby boy was quite a strong little sturdy toddler nearly, the chief's wife went to look at the chief's pigs to see how they were doing. And lo and behold, what did she see amongst the little piglets? She saw a beautiful baby boy, ever so happy, gurgling away. "What?" said the angry chieftainess. She says, "This child is still alive." And she marched over to her husband and said, "I want you to kill that big Mother Pig. We need a festival in this family." And she thought, "Aha, festival, there will be no blood on my hands." Eventually the chief agreed and said that the Mother Pig had to be slaughtered. The Mother Pig overheard what they had said, and she took the little baby to the cow and said, "Please help me with this little baby. He's about to die and I'm to be slaughtered. Please look after him." So Mother Cow said, "Bring him." And she raised this little baby as her own. But of course, you know what happened to Mother Pig. She was slaughtered, and the whole village had a huge festival. But thank heavens the chieftainess couldn't eat the pork steak that night, because she felt somehow what she had done wasn't right. The cow looked after the baby until he was a sturdy toddler. She would hide him behind her udder, until one day again the chief's wife came and saw this little boy toddling around and said, "What? He is still alive. I shall ask my husband to slaughter this cow, and then this child will starve of hunger, and again there will be no blood on my hands." And she went off to her husband and said, "Husband, I need you to kill this cow." And the husband said, "But no, I can't. It's my favorite. Choose another one." And she said, "If you don't kill her, you don't love me anymore." Eventually, just to keep his wife happy, he went and he had the cow killed. But of course, before the cow was killed, she had heard what the plan was, and she snuck off with this little boy to the river, to Babasi, where she found a huge toad. And cow asked the toad, "Please look after this child, because this child is precious and I'm about to be slaughtered." And the toad said, "Yes, this is what I will do." So for many years, the little boy stayed with the toad. The toad taught him how to prepare all the delicacies from the river, fish and frog legs and all kinds of wonderful dishes, until he was about 10 years old. And then Mother Toad said, You can't stay with me anymore. You need to go into the world and find your fortune. But I will help you to find a job. So she took this little boy to the chief in the next valley, where he was employed as a cook. He had to cook food for all the workers who had to go and work in the fields. And he soon became very, very popular. But in the forest, on the way to the fields, there lived a very vicious mamba snake, a big, black, poisonous snake. Yes. And the workers were petrified because so many of them had been bitten by the snake. They would be on their way to work and the mamba would just come from the top of the trees and bite, and they would be dead because, as you know, you don't stand a chance against a black mamba. So eventually the chief got fed up and he got all the people in his village together and said, people, we have to make a plan here. I promise one of you who kill this black mamba, I will give you a fortune and your own chiefdom. Just get rid of it. And everybody tried, and many people were killed. Until one day, our little boy said, it is my turn. I am going to kill the snake. And what he did was he took a pot and he cooked the hottest porridge that you can possibly imagine in this big, big pot. And he asked people to help him to put the big, big pot of porridge on his head. Of course, he had a cloth there so that he wouldn't burn. And off he went into the forest. And the people of the village followed him because they wanted to see what was going to happen. And before you could say 1, 2, 3, the big black mamba jumped out of the tree and wanted to bite the boy. But where did he end up? In the hot pot of porridge where he was cooked to death. And of course, everybody was so happy. And the chief, in particular, lived up to his promise and made this young boy a chief of his own land and his own people. One day, a few years later, neighbors came to visit. The neighbors were the king and his wife, the chief and his wife from the other village. And they said, we came to meet this young boy who was so brave, who got rid of the black mamba. And when the boy came to them, the chief's wife said, oh, but he looks just like you, my darling. He's a spitting image of you when you were a young man. And they said to the boy, where are you from? He says, I don't know. Who's your family? I don't know. Where did you grow up? And he said, well, I was raised by a toad in the river. Ha, 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 everybody laughed. That's not possible, but let's go and find out. So off they went, and they found the old mother toad, who confirmed that she had raised this young boy for many years. And then they said to her, but where did he come from? And she said, but he was brought to me by a cow who was about to be slaughtered. So they went to the barn where the cow had lived, and they asked one of the old cows there, can you remember a baby boy that was raised by a cow? And yes, said the cow, my mother looked after him, but then she was slaughtered. Said, okay, but where did she get the baby? Oh, he said, Mother Pig brought her. And they went and they found an old pig, and they said, did your mother raise a baby boy? Yes, said the pig. I can so fondly remember having to share my mother's milk with this little boy. But who brought this little boy to you? Oh, it was the rats, they said. And they went back to the burnt-out hut, where they found one little old rat who was on the verge of death, and said, "Where did this little boy come from?" And the rat said, "Oh, the chief's wife put him here." And they celebrated and lived in joy because they had found their son. And of course, the evil chief's wife, the evil chieftainess, was kicked out of the village, and she had to live in the fields where she was banished to forever. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Well, mother's sacrifice. I recognise that. I recognise that. Yes, quite an image. Thank you, Susan. And we're going to finish our session. I'm going to finish us up with a story. I need to just play my pipe first to make sure it sounds okay. No?
In the future, put your sound on musician, I think it is.
Yeah, that's
And
what
that way they can.
I thought that was on.
No, I
I'll
don't think
tell
so.
another story then. Yeah, I can't tell that story then without the music.
So let me get one pun in. Since you're not going to play that, was that a pipe dream?
Inevitable, inevitable. Let's see if I can find. Oh, hang on. There's a setting. I'll try it now. Ah, there's a setting for musicians.
Yes, that's the one I was talking about.
So the piper stood on the bridge. He was confused. He had received a message, an offer to rid a town of its rats. And every town has rats, and rats are timid beasts. They lurk in barns and cellars and down by rivers. But they are timid. We hardly see them. But as he walked off the bridge, he looked across the square, and there were thousands of rats. There were rats running in and out of shops, being chased out of houses by people with brooms. They were running in and out of schoolyards and up and down the lawns by the river. And immediately understood. And he went down and he spoke to the boatman. Then he walked across the square and up the stone steps of the town hall and into the great oak doors. And he was shown into the council chamber, and there in the council chamber was the mayor with his long robe and a fur collar and a gold chain, a man whose chest was puffed out at his own importance, and the councillors either side. And the piper quietly said, "I have come to deal with your rats." But their eyes widened when he told them the price. But they said nothing because the townsfolk were appalled by all these rats, and there were constant complaints every single day. So they agreed, and the piper left, and he went out through the great oak doors and down the stone steps, and he stood on a stone bench in the middle of the square, and he began to play. And the rats came. The rats came from the riverside, from the barns, from the cellars, from the houses. They ran and pushed and jostled and squealed, and in no time at all the square was one carpet of little grey rats, all pushing toward the music. And he continued to play as he stepped off the bench and walked down toward the river. And the rats followed. The rats followed even when he stepped into the boat and the boatman rowed him out into the middle of the river, for they couldn't stop. The music had enchanted them. And he stood in the boat and he watched as a grey raft of drowned rats sailed down the river toward the sea. The boatman rowed him back to the bank and he paid him, and he walked across the square and up the stone steps and through the great oak doors. But this time there were two large men stationed either side of the door. And he wondered what was about to happen. He walked into the council chamber, and there was the mayor looking smug. And the councillors, one or two, were smirking. One at the end snickered behind his hand. And when the piper stepped forward, the mayor said, "Well, we have decided that it was the river that killed the rats and not your good self. So your price is exorbitant. But as a gesture of goodwill, will we give you a quarter of what you owe?" And he closed, and a servant walked forward with a pouch, a leather pouch, with a quarter of the fee he'd asked for. Councillors thought they were very clever. The piper looked at the purse and looked at the assembled company and didn't touch it, but turned and walked out. The people of the town thought the mayor and the councillors were very clever because they had saved them a fortune. What a good trick! It was the river, not the piper. Everyone knew the truth of the matter, but they thought it was smart, as people do when they trick somebody. And that evening people spoke of it. What a fine mayor and councillors we've got to save us money. But the next morning the piper appeared in the square again, and he stood on the stone bench, and he began to play a different tune. And this time the children came. They came from the playground and the schoolyard. They came from helping their mother with the baking. And they ran and they skipped and they hummed the tune that they had never heard before. And soon the square was full of smiling, happy children listening to the piper's tune. And the piper did not stop playing when he stepped off the bench and walked across the bridge, and the children followed, skipping and smiling as they went, humming the tune, holding hands. A whole throng left the town and went up into the hills until the piper came to a stone wall, and he held up his pipe, and with a great grinding sound a door slid open, and in this huge cavern was a fairground and tables full of cake and ice cream. A great whoop of pleasure went up from the children as they swarmed into this place. And when the last child was in, the piper held his pipe up again, and the great stone door scrunched back. But it wasn't the last child, for as he turned, the piper saw a small boy with a wooden crutch who hadn't been able to keep up. A small boy had seen all his friends go into this fairground and the cakes and the ice cream, but he was too late. And the piper thought, good, he can tell the people of the town what has happened. And so it was that a hollow silence fell over the town. the empty schoolyard and playground. Parents heard a noise in the garden and they would look out hoping to see a child, but none was there. A small boy no longer needing a crutch sat on his own, no playmates for him. And the mayor was not immune. The mayor rose every morning and put his robe on and walked down the corridor and opened the door and looked at 2 empty beds. And this responsibility hung on his shoulders like a weight all day. But his wife took control. We must find a way, she said. We must find a way of paying the piper. And perhaps that will redeem us. Any action made the mayor feel better. He said, yes, no, twice. We'll pay him twice as much, 3 times as much. We'll have a collection. Everyone will pay. She said, no, you don't understand. It is a spiritual amount. We pay exactly what the piper asked for. So the money was gathered and people paid happily toward it. And messengers were sent out with it. Messengers who originally had gone to find the piper in the first place. And after the first day, nothing happened. And after the second day, nothing happened. And then after the 3rd day, when the mayor got up in the morning and put his robe on, he walked down the corridor and opened the door. And there were 2 small heads in the beds. And the ripple, like a peal of bells, rippled across the town as parents got up in the morning and found their children in their beds. Children who had no memory of the adventure they had been on, for they thought they had woken up the next day. And there was a celebration just for one day. And then it was never spoken of again. But they built a statue of the musician in the middle of the town, so it would remind them the price you pay if you cheat the piper. Thank you.
Keith, is that where we get the expression you have to pay the piper?
Oh, I imagine so.
And I have to say another thing. You definitely had the pipes for that story.
The man is full of puns. Anyway,
if you're going to be full of something, puns is a good thing to be full
well,
of.
there are worse things to be full of. Well, we've had some brilliant stories tonight, folks, and really thoughtful stuff as well. We even had a deaf frog, which is pretty unusual in itself. And we began with some music with Omar, and Evita always introduces her stories with some music as well, which is brilliant. So thank you all very much for this evening. And Keith and Despina have been our audience as well. So they're not telling stories tonight. So I'll just finish up by saying thank you again, and give yourselves a round of applause that Bubba does.
This has indeed been an exciting session, and it is Mother's Day in the United States. But Omar started off the song, and you brought the program to a conclusion with music. I was going to sing, but I like you guys, so I don't. But this is, and the wide variety. Susan, if you don't mind, I'm going to borrow and adapt your story, because it sounds like it would make a great Baba C tale. Hold a little bit closer. Can you put the name of the book in the chat real quick? The echo is back. I guess the echo got excited too.
Baba C, you want to sound like a god, don't you? That's why your voice doesn't seem to do it for anyone else.
Me sound like a god.
Evita, can I ask you, are you coming to the East Anglia Storytelling Festival?
I am.
Ah, well, I'll be there too.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm not one of the feature tellers. I'm just John's psychic as I
Yeah,
do.
you're John's assistant. That sounds very, very formal.
Assistant, yeah.
Evita, Evita, you're never just a. Whatever you are, but you're not
Exactly.
just a.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I'll bring stories, because I did say to Sarah, she says, we don't have much money. And I said, I do it the Marrakesh way. I just want somewhere to lay my head and tell stories. And that's what I'm doing
that's
here
it.
to
That's it.
travel. That's the only
Wow.
way.
Okay, so we have to leave individually because we haven't got the. I'm not the host, so I can't close the meeting.
Shukran, Walid.
Wahid, can you close the meeting?
Walid is the host. He usually closes the meeting.
Okay. Well,
And
I'll say cheerio. Then I'm going to go off and make myself a nice cup of tea, which is an English tradition.